My medical training as an osteopath, unlike most doctors, told us that breathing is all about getting oxygen in and getting rid of waste gases. Nothing could be further from the truth. It took me 25 years in the natural medicine scene before I realised this. Now, if you think back to childhood, when you were at school you were told that deep breathing is good for you. If you're stressed you're told, take a few deep breaths. And this whole concept of over-breathing is very much a part of our thinking in the West, to the point that 90% of us don't breathe correctly. 90% of us over-breathe. Now, what is breathing really about? Yes, you have to breathe in oxygen and you have to breathe out waste gases, CO2. What they tell you at school is that you die if you don't have any oxygen. Yes, that's agreed. What they never told me, and probably never told you, is that you'll die if you don't have any CO2 in your body. That's carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is fundamental to life. There's nothing on this planet that can survive without it. That's trees, you and me, insects, everything. How do we get into this situation now where we have this breathing too much, and when we do this, we breathe in plenty of oxygen, the air we breathe out contains plenty of oxygen, otherwise you'd be killing everybody who you're trying to resuscitate. We make all the carbon dioxide we need because there's little or nothing out in the atmosphere. It's 0.03%, it's a tiny amount. And when we breathe too much, we breathe out, we wash out that excess carbon dioxide. Now this is fine if your breathing is correct. You're producing more CO2 than you need, you wash out the surplus, and everybody's happy. If you breathe too much, you wash out beyond the amount you should breathe out, and then you're into trouble. And this is what we're going to be talking about. Now, a little bit of history is interesting. If we go back about 50 million years, we're on a planet where the atmosphere consists of about 6% carbon dioxide and oxygen. And this was great for all living things. And this went on for millions of years, until I think it was the Carboniferous period came along, when all of a sudden this excess carbon dioxide is mopped up by the trees and by crustacea. We finish up with coal seams and oil, and also all the white cliffs of Dover. But the CO2 level has now dropped to its present level pretty well of practically nothing, 0.03%. So for living things, going from there to now, there had to be an acclimatization to apparently almost living on an alien planet. The way that mammals got round this is they, similar to carrying an oxygen tank on your back, they carry oxygen, the CO2 tanks, in their body, in the form of lungs. So if you think of the lungs now as carriers of tanks of CO2, that allows us to survive on this planet where there's practically no CO2, which is vital for life. When we're breathing normally, the body is producing quantities of CO2, goes into the tank, we breathe out the surplus, and the tank stays full. If we breathe out too fast, too often, too much, the tank starts to empty. And that is when the dangers arise. Now, why do we need CO2? What's the consequences of having a low CO2 in our body? Okay, three things, at least. The first thing is that muscles, smooth muscle which is wrapped around airways, wrapped around blood vessels, around hollow organs, starts to spasm and twitch. This is in the physiology books, it's nothing new. The second thing is the blood which is circulating around the body, instead of doing a useful job of picking up the oxygen in the lungs and delivering the oxygen into the tissue, starts holding on to the oxygen and going back to the lungs half full. And the third thing, it creates effect of producing more histamine in the body, which makes you much more sensitive to irritants. Now talk to any asthmatic and they'll tell you, I recognize all these symptoms. The tightening, the spasming of the airways, that is the effect of the low CO2. The inflammation of the airways is the histamine, reacting with all those allergens, the pollens and any other irritants. And the delivery of oxygen throughout the body in this poor way, because the hemoglobin is not working properly, also makes the asthmatic feel terribly sick. It then leads on to a whole range of other diseases.